But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Bill Maher is one of the last voices in American entertainment who refuses to bow to pressure, and that's exactly why he drives the left up the wall. You don't have to agree with everything he says, no one does, but in the middle of today's political chaos, it takes real courage to say, yeah, I'm not shutting up. If you respect people who speak what everyone else whispers, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and drop a comment, because this topic is just getting started. Maher makes his point immediately. The new left is not traditional liberalism, and he isn't defending anyone's feelings. He's right. A vocal, hostile minority has conflated liberalism with woke ideology, even though they're often complete opposites. Take Israel, for example. Old school liberalism has always supported a two-state solution, basic, uncontroversial liberalism 101. But the woke crowd chants slogans that sound more like a political coloring book from the river to the sea. Maher's point is simple. Take any position you like, but don't try to pass it off as traditional liberalism. That's why the woke left despises him. He constantly disrupts their narrative, and then he does something that really shocks critics. He's consistent. He refuses to preemptively hate, to join the outrage parade every time Trump takes a breath. He says repeatedly, I'm not going to freak out over things that haven't happened yet. Imagine that, responding to reality instead of obsessing over hypothetical futures. Meanwhile, half the political world is emotionally drained just thinking about what might happen.
You're still brooding about the election. You're in the wrong building. I'm here just to make you laugh, and I'm not going to pre-hate anything that hasn't happened yet. And also look around. Are you really suffering that much? Now, Trump, could he blow up the world on the second day? Yeah, he could. But until he does, I'm not going to chase every crazy thing he does, and I'm not going to get upset about things that haven't happened yet.
Maher has long critiqued Trump, but always based on facts, not the apocalyptic hypotheticals Twitter loves to spin. He condemns actions, not imagined disasters, which sets him apart from many Democrats who go DEFCON 1 at Trump's name. Maher refuses to live in fear-based fantasy or act as if the country is collapsing with every headline. On elections, he points out an uncomfortable truth. Hillary Clinton simply wasn't a strong candidate. The left treated her loss like some cosmic malfunction or Russian meme apocalypse, but Maher spoke what many Democrats quietly knew. America didn't regress. Hillary wasn't compelling. The same Hollywood-style push has now been applied to Kamala Harris. Flashy endorsements, celebrity photo ops, and late-night fluff, yet the outcome is identical. Voters aren't swayed by hype, they vote for authenticity, and Kamala never crossed that line. Maher remains one of the few left-leaning voices willing to say it.
And when I look around, America is, it's a place with a lot of problems, but also compared to the rest of the world, it's doing better than most places. And, a lot of people are just living their best lives.
Are you this way, period, or did it take you a little while to get to this point after the election?
I was ready for Trump to win. I thought that she would win. I thought that America always basically moves forward and not backward, but I was wrong. I was certainly not surprised because I did not think she was a great.
He also addresses the backlash he gets for being honest. And let's face it, nobody likes getting attacked by their own side or losing fans. Maher admits, yeah, it stings, but he refuses to muzzle himself just to fit into the emotionally safe bubble the woke crowd demands. That's what makes him remarkable. He doesn't only call out the right, he critiques everyone. His own party, his admirers, his tribe. In today's media, that's almost unheard of. Most performers preach to the choir, only striking one side while protecting their own, like defending a fragile snow globe. Maher, however, punches in every direction. People from all political backgrounds approach him saying, "Thank you for not pulling punches," because his honesty is a breath of fresh air in a country drowning in political cowardice.
Wrong and how it got in its own way and what it needed to do to fix the party. Your thoughts?
You know, Stephen A., you can't have everything. That's what you come to if you live long enough. Would I like to have everybody on my side? Would I like to have everybody be my fan? Of course. Was it not great when some super woke people left because I wasn't on their page? Yeah, I wish everybody was still my fan. But you can't have that. Do I think I deserve a bunch of Emmys that I would never get because this town is woker than I am?
If there's one issue Maher never backs down on, it's free speech. He's old school. He knows it isn't just a catchy slogan, but the foundation of all other freedoms. The moment you start regulating what people can say based on feelings, politics, or social pressure, you're heading straight into authoritarian territory.
It would take a million times if you offered it to me against those things. The joy of being able to speak my mind as I see it, and the love that gets me from people, from all stripes, who appreciate that. The things that people say to me. I've been out with every type of celebrity. They don't say the things they say to me to other celebrities. That means more to me than anything. But things that people say to me and how much it means to them that they feel like there's somebody out there who is never pulling a punch and who will just call out anybody wherever they are in the political spectrum.
He points to COVID as a prime example. Early on, even discussing the lab leak theory was forbidden. You couldn't debate it, challenge it, or study it. The message was clear. Shut up. That's false information. And yet, now it appears the lab leak theory wasn't far-fetched after all. Maher's point is sharp. Silencing people doesn't protect the truth. It buries it. That's exactly what happened. Tech companies acted as referees, governments panicked, and platforms turned into speech police. Algorithms decided which truths could exist, shutting down open dialogue in the process.
I'm a free speech guy. I believe not in absolute free speech. That's not even in the Constitution. And of course, we have the example of, yelling fire in a crowded theater and so forth. There are things that you can't do. But I think he's basically right. We've gone way too far toward whose facts? I mean, COVID was a perfect example of this. And I think that's something that really opened a lot of people's eyes to what's going on with censorship in this country. We were not allowed to really discuss this. And it was a new phenomenon, this new pathogen we had. It should have been discussed. We're finding out now, as each week rolls by, more and more, it's pretty obvious that COVID, the origin of it was the lab.
Maher then points to Canada, specifically Justin Trudeau, as an example of what happens when free speech is treated as a privilege rather than a right. 5 years ago, Trudeau was widely admired. Now, out of power, he's deeply unpopular for making certain conversations nearly illegal. If a nation's first instinct is censorship, it doesn't have a democracy. It has the illusion of one. Maher goes further. A culture that stops thinking gradually forbids criticism under the guise of protecting feelings. When organizations, activist groups, religions, or philosophies can't be challenged for fear of offense, the truth disappears, leaving only the narrative endorsed by the loudest faction.
I think in 50 years, when people look back, they'll say, wait a second, there was a lab in Wuhan where the disease started that was studying this disease and using gain-of-function research on it, and they were debating whether this was the cause of it. Now, it could have been the wet markets. Absolutely, we don't know for sure. But the fact that we weren't even allowed to discuss that it was coming from a lab, which again, it probably was now, we know, that should tell you all you need to know. The fact that Justin Trudeau just stepped down in Canada, I mean, this guy had a very high approval rating 5 years ago, and he left really very unpopular because Canada became that kind of place where you really did not have the kind of free speech we do, and many other countries.
He also gives a concrete example, a terrorist attack in New Orleans. According to the woke playbook, Discussing radical Islam is off limits because it might offend someone. But honest discussion isn't about labeling all Muslims. It's about critiquing extremist ideology without condemning entire communities. Yet nuance seems forbidden. Free speech isn't meant to shield feelings. It exists to protect the truth, and sometimes the truth offends. That's reality. Maher sees a dangerous cultural trend, untouchable groups, organizations, and beliefs that can't be criticized, laughed at, or even mentioned without praise. This isn't progress, it's fear masquerading as virtue.
Unlike these countries in Europe where they have rules about what you can say that's going to be censored simply because it's hurting somebody's feelings. You know, you can't say something about Islam because it's Islamophobia. But what if it's true? You know, we just had a terrible incident in New Orleans that was a jihadist attack. We want to be able to speak about that plainly and honestly without worrying somebody's going to say, don't say that because it's not all Muslims. Well, no one's saying it's all Muslims. We're saying we need to discuss about this honestly and openly and patently, and you can't do that if somebody's looking over your shoulder and saying, well, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings.
He hits the nail on the head. When things are off limits, society doesn't become safer. It becomes more ignorant, and ignorance breeds real danger. This brings us to what may be the core of Maher's ideology. Woke ideology opposes traditional liberalism. He explains the difference with remarkable clarity. Traditional liberals value debate, individuality, and open-mindedness. They question authority rather than worship it and prioritize independent thought over groupthink. The woke movement, by contrast, has evolved into a moral purity cult, where language is monitored, thoughts are filtered, and people are judged not by intent, but by how well they follow constantly changing activist rules. Maher warns that if this philosophy spreads unchecked, it could tear the country apart from within. Collapse is inevitable when society is governed by outrage, fear, and imposed ideology. And he's not exaggerating. Once activists become authoritarians, progress dies, replaced by enforcement.
That doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Then Maher reminds us what his role really is: to cross lines, poke the bear, and say what polite society is too afraid to utter. Comedy exists to test limits and challenge assumptions. A little audience discomfort isn't just acceptable, it's the point. Comedy without offense is just noise. Maher also refuses to be a loudspeaker for conformity. He calls out Americans who march in support of Hamas, jokingly comparing it to cheering for the planes on 9/11. Agree or not, the point is clear: hypocrisy should be exposed. Supporting a terrorist group isn't a radical political stance, it's insanity cloaked as activism. Maher remains compelling because he refuses to bend to hashtags, soften his opinions for applause, or restrain himself to stay in Hollywood's good graces. He speaks freely, unapologetically.
First of all, my job is to cross the line. That's what a stand-up comedian's job. Not all stand-up, not all comedy. Some comedy's just silly, but not mine. So, you know, how do you know where the line is until people like me cross it to a degree? I'm never upset when people in the audience recoil. You know, I don't want to make the whole show recoiling. You want to be popular. But there's a couple of times in the show where people just are like, ugh. You know, I mean, we were just talking about the Israel situation. There's a line in there where I say, you know, really? Marching for Hamas? You're marching for terrorist groups? It's like rooting for the planes on 9.
Maher stands out as one of the few who still prioritizes honesty over popularity in an era where social media mobs punish anyone who strays from the party line and political tribes demand total loyalty. You don't have to love him or agree with him, but he is fearless. In today's culture, boldness is nearly extinct. Maher forces you to face uncomfortable truths, question your assumptions, and refocus the conversation on substance over spectacle. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what America needs right now.